The crystalline spires of Glacius Prime pierced the violet sky like frozen lightning, their surfaces catching and splitting the light of twin suns into prismatic rainbows. Deep within the tallest tower, Princess Kestra pressed her palm against the ice-cold window, watching her breath fog the glass. 23 years old, and she had never set foot beyond these walls. "Your Highness," came the dry voice of High Counselor Vex from behind her. "The alien delegation has arrived." Kestra's fingers involuntarily clenched and frost spread across the window in delicate patterns. She pulled her hand back quickly, wrapping her arms around herself. "I told you I cannot meet with them. What if I lose control again?" Vex's reflection appeared beside hers in the frosted glass, his angular face marked by the ritual scars of his rank. "These humans seek to corrupt our pure world with their chaotic presence." Before Kestra could respond, the tower's great doors burst open. A figure strode in without invitation, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair touched by early silver and eyes the color of Earth's oceans. He wore the simple blue uniform of a human diplomat, unmarked by weapons or ceremony. "Princess Kestra," he said, offering a slight bow. "I'm Ambassador Marcus Reed. I've traveled very far to meet you." The temperature in the room plummeted. Ice crystals began forming on every surface as Kestra's power responded to her shock. "How dare you enter without permission?" "Guards," I gave. "The guards the day off," Marcus said calmly, even as his breath began to mist. "I wanted to speak with you privately." "Impossible," Vex sputtered, frost already coating his ceremonial robes. "The protocols are designed to keep your princess isolated," Marcus interrupted, his gaze never leaving Kestra's violet eyes. "I've studied your culture, counselor. I know what you've told her about the outside universe." Kestra's power surged, and a wall of ice erupted between them. "You know nothing about me, human." But Marcus stepped around the barrier, closer than anyone had dared come in years. "I know you've been alone your entire life. I know they've convinced you that your gift is a curse. I know," he said softly, "that you're tired of being afraid." Ice storms swirling around Kestra faltered for just a moment. In that heartbeat of calm, she saw something impossible in the human's eyes, not fear, but understanding. Then her emotions overwhelmed her again, and the room filled with a blizzard that would have killed any ordinary being. But when the snow settled, Marcus was still standing there, ice coating his hair and uniform, offering her something she had never received before, a genuine smile. Marcus stood motionless as the blizzard raged around him, ice crystals cutting at his exposed skin like tiny knives. His diplomatic training had prepared him for hostile negotiations, but nothing quite like this. When the storm finally subsided, Kestra stared at him in amazement. "Why aren't you running?" she whispered, her voice barely audible above the settling ice. "Because running won't help either of us," Marcus replied, brushing snow from his shoulders. "And because I think you need someone who won't run?" High Counselor Vex stepped forward, his ceremonial staff crackling with energy. "This demonstration proves my point, Princess. The alien's presence destabilizes your powers. He must be removed immediately." "No," Kestra said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "I want to hear what he has to say." Marcus smiled and sat cross-legged on the frozen floor. "On Earth we have people who struggle with overwhelming emotions, too. We've developed techniques to help them find balance." "Ridiculous superstition," Vex scoffed. "Your Highness, surely you won't, Counselor," Kestra interrupted, ice forming around her feet. "Leave us." Vex's scarred face tightened, but he bowed curtly. "As you wish, but I'll be monitoring for your safety." His cold eyes locked with Marcus's as he departed. "Any sign of danger to our princess, and you'll discover just how inhospitable our world can be." When they were alone, Marcus began speaking in a low, steady voice. "Close your eyes, Princess. Feel your breathing. Don't try to control the cold, just acknowledge it exists." "That's impossible," Kestra said, but she found herself following his instructions anyway. "The power has its own will." "No," it responds, "to your will. You've just never been taught to recognize the difference." Marcus's voice was hypnotic, patient. "In my world, We call this mindfulness. Feel the ice, but don't judge it. Don't fear it. For the first time in her life, Kestra felt her powers settle into something resembling calm. The constant tension in her shoulders eased slightly. I can feel the difference. Good, that's the first step. They spent hours together, Marcus, teaching breathing exercises and meditation techniques, while Kestra slowly learned to observe her emotions rather than be overwhelmed by them. As the day progressed, the temperature in the room gradually warmed. "Why are you helping me?" Kestra asked during a quiet moment. Aquas was quiet for a long time. "Because I know what it's like to be feared for something you can't control. My own abilities. Let's say they've made me unwelcome in many places. You have powers too, of a sort." Marcus's expression grew distant. The ability to see through lies, to read people's true intentions. "It's made me very good at diplomacy, but very poor at making friends." Kestra studied his face, seeing the loneliness there that mirrored her own. "Vex says humans are chaotic and dangerous." "Some are," Marcus admitted, "just like some of your people are. But most of us just want to live peacefully, to connect with others who understand us." Outside, unknown to them both, Vex was already planning his next move. Composing messages to the military garrison about the growing alien threat to their beloved princess. 3 weeks had passed since Marcus's arrival, and the changes in Princess Kestra were undeniable. She now walked the corridors of her tower without leaving trails of ice, and servants no longer fled when she approached.
Ice.
For the first time in years, flowers had been brought to her chambers. They actually survived. "Try again," Marcus encouraged, as they practiced in the garden courtyard. "Feel the emotion, acknowledge it, but don't let it overwhelm you." Esther closed her eyes, remembering a childhood memory of her parents' death in a shuttle crash. Pain flared in her chest, but instead of the usual blizzard, only a gentle snow began to fall. She opened her eyes in wonder. "Ah, I did it. I actually controlled it." "You're learning to work with your power instead of against it," Marcus said, pride evident in his voice. "Your people should see this." Vex would never allow it. Kestra's expression darkened, and the snowfall intensified slightly. "He says the citizens aren't ready to see me yet." Before Marcus could respond, footsteps echoed across the courtyard. A figure emerged from the shadows, a woman with silver hair and battle scars, wearing the dark blue uniform of the Outer Rim. Settlements. "Captain Zorathel, Outer Territories," she announced, offering a crisp salute to Kestra. "Aye, Your Highness, I've come with urgent news." Vex appeared moments later, flanked by guards. "Captain, you were ordered to report to me first before the people deserve to hear this directly from their princess," Zora interrupted, her steel-gray eyes flashing. "The neighboring systems aren't planning any attacks, Your Highness. Fact, the Confederation of Outer Worlds has been trying to establish peaceful trade relations for years." Kestra felt the familiar chill of her power responding to shock. "That's impossible." "Vex has shown me the intelligence reports fabricated," Zora said bluntly. "I've seen the real communications. The counselor has been intercepting diplomatic messages and replacing them with false threats." "Treasonous lies," Vex snarled, his staff crackling with energy. "Guards, arrest this infiltrator." But Marcus stepped forward, his diplomatic training taking over. "Captain, can you prove these accusations?" Zora produced a data crystal, recorded transmissions, timestamps, even some of the counselor's own orders to forge documents. "He's been keeping Princess Kestra isolated not to protect her, but to control her." The temperature plummeted as Kestra's emotions spiraled. "You're saying everything I've been told about the outside world ... was a lie?" "Not everything," Vex said smoothly, though sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cold. "The human remains a threat. In fact, my sources indicate he's planning to assassinate you during tomorrow's council session." "That's ridiculous," Marcus protested, but Vex was already signaling his guards. "I've intercepted communications detailing the plot," Vex continued. "The assassination is designed to look like an accident, a surge of your own powers during an emotional moment with your human friend." Kestra looked between Marcus and Vex, ice crystals swirling around her as she struggled to process the conflicting information. Who could she trust? The man who had helped her find peace, or the counselor who had guided her since childhood. "Your Highness," Zora said urgently, "there's more. I've received word that Vex has already ordered General Thorn to mobilize the garrison. He plans to frame Ambassador Reed and use the incident to justify declaring martial law. The implications hit Kestra like a physical blow. If Vex seized complete control using her as an excuse, her people would never know freedom. And Marcus, the first person to see her as more than a weapon, would die for the crime of showing her kindness. For the first time in her life, Princess Kestra felt something stronger than fear or confusion. She felt rage. The ice fortress that erupted from the palace courtyard was unlike anything Glacius Prime had ever seen. Crystalline walls shot skyward in impossible spirals, while bridges of frozen light connected floating platforms. At its heart stood Princess Kestra, her silver hair whipping in the supernatural wind she had created, her violet eyes blazing with controlled fury. "Magnificent," breathed Captain Zora. Even as General Thorn's troops surrounded the fortress with energy weapons trained on its walls, inside the central spire, Marcus found himself in a cell of living ice knot, a prison, but protection. The translucent walls, he could see Kestra facing down her former guardian. "You've made your choice, child," Vex said, his voice carrying across the courtyard through speakers mounted on the general's war machines. "Protecting the alien over your own people. How tragic that your powers have finally driven you completely mad." "The only madness," Kestra called back, her voice amplified by the unique acoustics of her ice palace, "was believing your lies for so long." General Thorn, a massive figure in ceremonial armor, stepped forward. "Princess, release the human and surrender. Counselor Vex has evidence of the assassination plot. Don't force us to use extreme measures." "Show me this evidence," Kestra demanded. Vex produced a datapad, projecting a hologram of what appeared to be Marcus speaking with unknown figures, recorded 3 days ago. "Your human friend, discussing the best way to eliminate you during a moment of emotional vulnerability." Even from his ice cell, Marcus could see the recording was masterfully crafted. His own voice, his own face, but words he had never spoken. "Voice synthesis, technology," he called out. "Vex, you've outdone yourself. The alien grows desperate with exposure," Vex announced to the gathering crowd of citizens who had emerged from the city to witness the spectacle. "See how he tries to manipulate our princess even now?" Kestra was no longer listening to Vex's words. She was watching the people. Her people. Families huddled together, pointing at her ice fortress with expressions she had seen all her life. Fear, confusion, uncertainty. Children hid behind their parents' legs. "They're still afraid of me," she whispered, and for a moment the fortress flickered. "No," Marcus called from his protective cell. "Look closer, Kestra. Really look." She focused, using the clarity Marcus had taught her to see past her own assumptions. Yes, there was fear, but not of her. The citizens were afraid of the weapons, pointed at their princess, afraid of General Thorn's soldiers, afraid of what Vex might do next. An elderly woman near the front of the crowd stepped forward, raising her voice despite the danger. "Princess, is it true what Captain Zora says? Have we been lied to all these years?" Silence. General Thorn barked, but more voices joined the first. "Let her speak. We want to hear our princess. No more secrets." Kestra felt something she had never experienced before: the support of her people. They weren't fleeing from her power, or standing up to tyranny despite it. The realization sent a surge of strength through her that had nothing to do with ice or cold. "General Thorn," she said, her voice carrying absolute authority. "Stand down your weapons. Counselor Vex, you are relieved of your position." "I think not," Vex snarled, raising his staff. Energy crackled between its crystalline points. "You forget who really controls the military, child. General, execute the alien. The princess's hysteria will end when her corrupting influence is removed." Thorn hesitated for only a moment before raising his weapon toward Marcus's cell. That hesitation was all Kestra needed. The fortress exploded outward in a controlled burst of ice and wind that disarmed every soldier without harming a single person. In the same motion, she created a bridge of solid ice that carried her down to face Vex directly. "The only corruption here," she said, ice crystals forming around her feet with each step, was your fear of losing power. The confrontation between Princess Kestra and High Counselor Vex lasted only moments. But those moments reshaped the future of Glacius Prime forever. Vex raised his ceremonial staff, energy crackling along its length as he prepared to strike down the princess he had manipulated for so long. You were nothing before I gave you purpose, child, a dangerous freak hiding in towers. But Kestra was no longer the frightened girl who had cowered before his authority. Ice flowed from her hands, not in chaotic bursts of emotion, but in precise, beautiful patterns. The energy from Vex's staff struck her barrier and shattered harmlessly,
Ow.
while crystalline tendrils wrapped around the weapon and froze it solid. Was never hiding, Kestra said calmly, advancing step by step. You were the one who hid behind lies, behind fear, behind the illusion of protection. General Thorn, witnessing his commander's defeat, threw down his weapon. Princess, we were told you were unstable, dangerous to the people. Look around you, General, Marcus said as he emerged from the dissolved ice cell. Does she look unstable to you? The fortress had transformed into something beautiful, not a weapon of war, but a work of art that caught the light of the twin suns and cast rainbows across the courtyard. Citizens moved closer, no longer afraid, their faces filled with wonder at what their princess could create when her power flowed from love rather than fear. Captain Zora stepped forward with the true diplomatic communications that had been hidden for years. Your Highness, the Confederation of Outer Worlds has been waiting to welcome Glacius Prime as an equal partner. Trade agreements, cultural exchanges, shared technology, all of it was offered in good faith. Kestra accepted the data crystal, feeling the weight of possibilities in her hands. And Earth. What does your world truly want from us, Marcus? Marcus smiled, the same genuine expression that had first broken through her defenses. Partnership. Your people have mastered crystalline technology that could revolutionize construction across the galaxy. We have agricultural techniques that could help you grow food in previously barren regions. But more than that, he stepped closer. We want friendship. Universe is vast and often lonely. We're stronger when we face it together. The crowd murmured their approval, but it was an elderly craftsman who spoke loudest. Princess, can your powers help us build better homes? Stronger shelters for the winter storms. For the first time in her life, Kestra heard her abilities discussed not as a curse, but as a gift. Yes, she said, her voice carrying across the courtyard. Yes, I can help with that. Other voices joined. In engineers asking about structural applications, farmers wondering about irrigation systems, artists envisioning sculptures that could never be carved from ordinary ice. Kestra felt tears freezing on her cheeks as she realized that her people didn't need to fear her power. They needed her to embrace it. Vex's staff broken and his authority shattered, was led away by guards who now answered to their princess rather than their counselor. This isn't over, he called back. You'll see what chaos your alien friends bring. The only chaos, Kestra replied, was the one you created with your lies. 6 months later, the ice gardens of Glacius Prime had become famous throughout the sector. Tourists from dozens of worlds came to see the crystalline sculptures that Princess Kestra and her people created together, that told the story of transformation, of finding strength in what was once considered weakness. Marcus stood beside her on the highest balcony of the palace, watching Earth's first trade ships land in the newly constructed spaceport. Their friendship had deepened into something more precious than either had expected. But their greatest achievement was what they had built together. Proof that different worlds, different peoples, different kinds of power could create something beautiful when trust replaced fear. Any regrets? Marcus asked, watching children from 3 different worlds playing together in the courtyard below. Kestra smiled, her violet eyes reflecting the light of ships carrying dreams between the stars. Only that it took us so long to begin. It's the ice. Crystals that formed around them now spelled out words in a dozen. Language is all, variations of the same concept that had once seemed impossible on this frozen world. Welcome.